Hi, everyone. It's Joe Veneri, the host of Fit Insider, the show where I talk with the entrepreneurs, executives, and investors who are redefining the business of fitness and wellness. Today, I'm joined by Lionel Conacher, managing partner at NEXT Ventures. NEXT Ventures is a venture capital firm investing in companies focused on human optimization across sports, fitness, and wellness. In this episode, we talk about how Lionel teamed up with Lance Armstrong to start the firm, emerging opportunities in hydration, AI, and skin sensors, and why companies like Apple, Amazon, and Google are entering the health and fitness space. Let's get into it. Hi, Lionel. Welcome to Fit Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Excited to talk today. And I think just to kick things off, can you give the listeners some background about you and what you're working on at NEXT Ventures?
Sure. So first and foremost, I'm a husband and father, and happen to be Canadian, but I live in Marin County down in the Bay Area. And I've been working with my partner, Lance Armstrong, now for about 2 years on this new venture fund focused on human optimization. And we brought on a third partner about a year ago, woman named Melanie Strong, who was at Nike for 20 years, and is our secret sauce. She's an awesome partner to have. Tremendous strength in the brand and marketing areas, and complements Lance and me, extremely well in terms of what we each do well. Background wise, I often get asked, how did you end up doing this with Lance, and how long have you known him? I've known Lance for about 20 years. I got involved in the predecessor to Livestrong, the Lance Armstrong Foundation, and met him through a mutual friend and former teammate of his, Canadian cyclist, pro cyclist named Steve Bauer, who introduced us originally. And then over the past 20 years, I've just kind of stayed in touch with him, and we've crisscrossed through pro cycling. And then I ended up selling the investment bank that I co-founded to Thomas Weisel Partners. And some of your listeners may know Tom owned the U.S. Postal and Discovery Channel teams that Lance rode for. So we reconnected through that and had stayed in touch. And about 2.5 years ago, following on the heels of the success of his Tour de France podcast, The Move, Lance called me one day and had this, what at the time seemed like a bit of a crazy idea to start a venture capital fund. Initially, his idea was to focus it on endurance-related things, because he was seeing a lot of opportunities from his listener base and from other folks on that specific area. And as we dove into it, we realized that we had to expand it to include a broader view of health and wellness and fitness. And so the term that we use is human optimization. So we're interested in companies that are playing in that realm, where they've got either products or services that are focused against the specific task of improving human optimization.
Yeah, and I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, not to cut you off there. I think it's a really interesting differentiator when you think about just how vast the sports, fitness, nutrition, wellness, outdoors, the piece around human optimization, I think is a way to not only stand out, but really drill down into, those opportunities that fit really well with, the firm and all the different partners' areas of expertise.
No, exactly. And we get asked whether it's too focused or whether it's too broad. I mean, we added, in terms of the sub buckets that we think about, which are, particularly fitness, nutrition, and wellness. Wellness, depending on how you define it, is potentially a $3 trillion industry. and I'm not exactly sure what when the economists describe it that way, everything that they're throwing into it, it's definitely huge. We tend to look at things with a pretty specific initial focus. We're all athletes, and we look at things through the lens of the high performance athlete initially, and then we step back and we ask ourselves the question: how does this relate to the general population? I.e., can it be a multi-billion-dollar company? And as you know, there's tons and tons of cool stuff out there that can help the top 0.1% of pro athletes achieve higher performance. We're actually really not interested in those things unless like PR lotion, which is a lotion that one of our companies, Amp Human, developed, takes sodium bicarbonate and transdermally transfers it through the skin into the muscles and buffers lactic acid buildup. And so Kipchoge, who broke 2 hours in the marathon recently, had it slathered all over his body. The ultimate hope for that company is that the guy that is going to walk the marathon in 7 hours is going to want it on his body as well. That my 82-year-old grandmother or mother, my 82-year-old mother, will use it to be able to golf every day. Whereas if she doesn't use it, she can't. And so we're looking at things that can help the high performance athlete and then translate to the general population.
Yeah, I think it's something that we're seeing kind of across the landscape. And when you look and think about it, it's almost like a trickle down effect, right? When you think about Apple as being a company that develops this, really beautiful technology, great design, great performance, and now making it more and more affordable for people. Folks talk about Tesla having done the same thing, where you optimize this technology at maybe a higher price, maybe even for a higher end consumer. And now hopefully it's getting to those folks where it has that application in everyday use.
No, exactly. And so it's easiest for me if I talk about some of the examples of the things that we've invested in and directly how that relates to what you just said. So one of the very first investments that we made was into a company called Aura, which makes a ring that is essentially a sleep sensor. And at the time when we first looked at it, which is more than 2 years ago now, we found that it was what we thought was the best sleep sensor on the market. It's not inexpensive; it's a $300 ring, but it initially had a pretty low penetration against higher end folks that were really focused on their health. When COVID hit, it immediately became topical because one of the things that it measures is core body temp. And they did a study with UCSF where they discovered with very high degree of accuracy, they could predict if someone was going to come down with COVID symptoms by the fact that their core body temp had elevated during the night, three or four nights before the actual symptoms showed up. And so LeBron James was a huge fan of the ring and had been using it. The company connected with the NBA when they were trying to figure out how they were going to solve their NBA bubble problem and keep everybody safe. And ultimately, they ended up announcing a partnership with the NBA where they had every single player and every single personnel that was involved in the bubble wearing the ring and are monitored on a daily basis for early detection of COVID. And so that's really interesting to me because I was on another podcast recently and got asked the question, well, gee, could this work for schools? And so we connected the company, and next thing you know, the school up in Toronto ended up getting all the parents to buy rings for their kids and the staff, and so you're translating from kind of higher end use to more broad use on a product like that, which we think is really cool.
Yeah, Aura is a great company, and it's certainly been, as you mentioned, very timely and in the headlines given COVID. When you think about a company like that, or really any of the companies that you're investing in, and maybe even some that you're not, what kind of filters are you using to think about, is this from a founder, team, company perspective, the right opportunity, something that we want to get involved with? What are those kind of check boxes that you go through?
So that's a great question. Initially, when Lance and I were first looking at it before Melanie joined, Lance is a real geek around this kind of stuff, and for his entire career was always on the leading edge of various technologies, and is loves to try this stuff and test it, and so we decided early on that we weren't going to be a fund that was investing in three guys and an idea on a whiteboard. We needed to have companies that had a defined product or service that was in the market, where we saw very clear product market fit and clear evidence of customer take up. And so by definition, that means that we're investing in what we call late seed or Series A type transactions, and the definition, as you know, of that has kind of shifted around. We're typically investing in companies that are, either doing $1 million in revs or have ARR of clear ARR of $1 million or larger. So that's our first filter. We typically then, before we get on a call with or meet management or dive into decks or anything, we just tell them to send us the product and or send us the service if it's an app or something, and we try it and we decide whether it's something that we ourselves would use. If it's outside of the scope of the things that Lance, Mel, or I are familiar with, we're very lucky to have a advisory board that has a broad perspective of expertise in various areas of human optimization, and so we use them as well to try the products and decide whether or not it's something that we want to do further work on. So for us, it always starts with the product or the service, and then what we typically do is we're fortunate between ourselves and our advisory board to be literally one phone call away from the worldwide expert in whatever the area is, and so we take advantage of that, and we pick up the phone and we call them and we check out people, product, market opportunity, and if those all check out, then we dive deep into the company. So process-wise, that's how we screen things. It's been honestly a little overwhelming for us. We've looked at, since we started the fund and did our first close in June of last year, we've looked at over 900 different companies, and those have come into us a number of ways. Either directly in through our info at Next Ventures mailbox, because somebody heard Lance talking about something on his podcast. We get a ton of referrals from our advisory board and from our LPs. We see a lot of deals from the other VCs that are banging around in our space, and somewhat surprisingly for us, because we haven't been around that long, we're also seeing referrals from the large VCs and that don't have the expertise in this area, but are interested in investing in it, and so they refer stuff to us and ask us to help them do the work on it, which has been pretty gratifying actually early on for us. So that's basically how we think about it.
Yeah, and certainly it sounds like no shortage of deals and opportunities coming across the table. The fitness, wellness, sports industry is booming, and lots of different verticals within it. When you think about that space and how it's evolving, is there a particular, do you see a white space that is an area that is, you're targeting beyond the kind of human performance and optimization? Or maybe said differently, is there a product or a company you wish somebody would start that you're just kind of itching to back that you think can emerge in this space?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of areas that we've been spending a lot of time on, and frankly trying to find the company to back in this specific area. Up till now, to be very honest, we've been pretty opportunistic in the investments that we've made. We've made 9 different investments, and pretty much across a wide array of areas, including the healthcare space and specific products for individual sports, etc. But we've done it up till now. We've been doing it really on an opportunistic basis. The areas that we're really interested in trying to find something, find a company that we could back, would be in the area of skin sensors. We think glucose monitoring is something that's going to be big in the future, and an essential tool for folks to be able to monitor their health. Hydration is an area that we're really interested in, and trying to find the best companies or company in that space. And hydration is something that Lance has spent literally his entire career trying to understand and perfect. We've done a huge study on the emerging area of fitness and coaching apps that are all broadly in the AI enabled space. And not surprisingly, there's been a ton of those that have popped up, particularly since the success of Peloton, and then with the huge tailwinds that COVID has provided to companies like that, given that people are largely trying to work out at home these days. So those would be the 3 areas that I would say, white spaces where there are a few folks banging around. Nobody's solved the problem yet, and we're really interested there. Out of 900 deals, I can't tell you how many drinks and bars we've seen. That's an area that I think would be very tough for us. We really like companies that have got a very definable competitive advantage, a patent or some sort of significant barrier to entry that is not easily replicable. So and so we've kind of, at least till now, we've shied away from the drinks and bars space.
Yeah, it's difficult to, at this point, differentiate, stand out, and really have something in the drinks and bars. But I do think, what you mentioned, the skin sensors, hydration, and AI, there's kind of a couple companies in the space that are doing the transdermal monitoring for blood glucose. That'll be interesting to see how that evolves over the next couple of years. And certainly, given COVID and the workout from home kind of surge that we've seen, the AI and at-home fitness has pretty much taken over. You've seen in just the last couple of days, Zwift raised a monster around $450 million. Tonal just raised $110 million. Tempo, I think a few months ago, was like $60 million. So a lot of activity there. With that, you've seen some of the larger tech companies, Apple with Fitness Plus, Amazon with Halo, obviously the Google Fitbit deal still kind of in limbo, but all these tech companies entering the space. How do you think about their involvement? Does that change the landscape or maybe even create more opportunities for early stage companies?
I think it creates more opportunity, and is essentially a validation of the space. Even as recently as 5 years ago, up till that point, there was a lot of snake oil, for lack of a better term, out there on the app side of things. People hadn't made great strides yet. Certainly on the supplement side, that's been an area where folks have banged around in it for a long time, but there's a lot of products out there that really don't do that much. One might argue cannabis falls into that area. We get asked all the time whether we'd look at cannabis deals, and we're not convinced that CBD is the panacea that everybody thinks it is, because the science doesn't back it up. So but what has happened literally in the last 5 years is there all of a sudden there seems to have been a step change, and clearly companies like Amazon and Google and Apple have realized it. The other thing that has changed significantly, from our perspective, and one of the reasons why we thought a fund like this might be timely is that if you take the millennials and younger, as a generation, and whatever they're going to call the current generation, they care more about health and fitness and wellness than any previous generation. And so, for us, that's a fascinating market driver, and something that that I think would will be a huge tailwind for us, and it's why the companies that you mentioned are all focused on this space right now. And so I just think it's validation, and I think it's going to be good, for the multitude of startups that we're seeing, because those companies will become the buyers of the companies that people are inventing new tech and things, solutions for the problems that people are facing in these areas. The other side of it that people haven't really focused on, that we're seeing a lot, is we're seeing the whole insurance payer market get really focused on this. We're seeing the CVSs of the world, the Walmarts of the world get really, really focused on these areas as well. And so I think there's kind of a tidal shift that's happening, that is going to provide for a very robust market in these types of companies for some time to come.
It's interesting. I think it's spot on, but also as you think about younger generations, the movement towards health and wellness, what we've also seen is that what qualifies as health and wellness has broadened, and you've started to see things like non-alcoholic beer, not drinking, sober culture, not only meditation and mindfulness, but now heart rate variability, breath work, sleep. As you mentioned, with this fits right into Aura, this becoming maybe an aspect of health and wellness that we didn't think about as much. Even a few years ago, it was all, heart rate trainers and monitors. Everybody's wearing a strap to monitor themselves while they're working out and otherwise. So these different categories create these new verticals, and the definition just broadens more than maybe even we ever thought. As you think about it continuing to evolve, what does this sector look like? How does it evolve? What are the kind of pillars that we should maybe be keeping an eye on?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that it's not going to look like anything any of us think about today. I've been fortunate to be in the Bay Area for the last 12 years of my life, and I've seen an absolute sea change of information and how people look at the world and products and everything. So it's been I'm an old enough guy. I'm 58 years old. I was in college at Dartmouth when the Apple Macintosh was given out to all of us, and we had the first intranet. And I try to tell my kids this. It wasn't really that long ago. It was 35 years ago. I was walking around with this big huge square Apple Macintosh that I thought was revolutionary. That probably had 1/100th of the power, maybe 1/1000th. I'm actually not even sure of the Apple 11 that I have sitting on my desk. And to me, that wasn't very long ago, right? And so I don't know where it's going to go. If you had told me 3 years ago that I would be wearing a ring at night every night and looking at an app when I wake up every morning to see how I slept and whether I should give her today or not, I would have told you you're crazy. And that's only 3 years ago. And yet a year after that, we invested in this company called Aura, and now it's ubiquitous. And so the only thing I know for sure is that the pace of change is going to continue, that the velocity is going to increase, and whatever we think is normal today is going to be considered, as soon as 5 years from now, or maybe 3 years from now, definitely 10 years from now, is going to be considered to be, geez, I remember those people used to wear rings on their fingers to check their sleep, and it's going to be some implant in your earlobe or something 10 years from now. I have no idea what it's going to be, but that's all I know is that it's going to change, and it's going to change really fast. And the thing that isn't going to change, and I think that COVID, I think if COVID hadn't happened, this was still going to happen and happen rapidly. Because COVID has happened, everybody's focused on their health. Everybody's focused on their wellness. Everybody, as you know, I don't need to tell you that, the bike industry can't keep bikes in stock. The surfboard industry can't keep surfboards in stock. The reason that there's this explosion of home fitness apps is because people are trying to get more healthy and are focused on their wellness in a way that we've just never seen before. And it used to be a small percentage of the population, and now it's a much larger percentage of the population, and I think it's going to continue to grow.
And I think with that, the one question that comes up as things continue to evolve, we see all these different categories. One thing that I've personally been excited about, if you can possibly look on the bright side of COVID, as you mentioned, just the idea of outdoor activities, of bikes, of camping even, all these different things, the benefits of being in the sun, just purely being outside and walking. You start to look at that as maybe outside of the realm of commercialized fitness, wellness, and health. Because so much of what we've seen is you mentioned the $1 trillion wellness industry, the investment, the companies being poured into it. But then on the flip side of that, we don't necessarily have the health outcomes from, obesity, sedentary lifestyles, the types of foods that we're eating. Do you think, or how do you think we make this leap from everything is getting invested into this segment to like meaningful change on the other side of it?
That's a great question, and one that our society needs to figure out the answer to it. I do think I really do think that there is a halo effect. I do think that the more people that are doing it, the more people will do it. And I say that, I was in New York a week ago, moving my daughter in to her apartment. She's a sophomore at NYU, and I've had a lot of people ask me, well, so what was New York like? And what I can tell you is that there was always a ton of people walking in New York. There were twice as many people walking in New York. And and so, I mean, the sidewalks and lots of lanes of the various streets were just taken over by people, moving around under their own power. And I think there is definitely going to be a halo effect to that. How it cuts across demographics and gets into middle America, and I'm not really sure about that, but certainly in the major city centers, I think you're going to see that happen. And again, I'm going to come back to what I said earlier, which is this current generation, and it's across the entire generation, are just way more well informed, and they care a lot more about their wellness than any previous generation did. And it's I mean, I'm going to raise TikTok as a crazy example of this, but TikTok is the reason TikTok took off is because it's a dance app. I mean, basically people get on TikTok and it's turned into other things now, but initially it was a very physical act of dancing and posting, and it cut right across demographics, and there's a reason that took off.
And just maybe changing gears a little bit as you think about, I'm certainly hopeful that the space continues to develop, and folks, it's really about democratizing access, making sure that the barriers to all the things that we've talked about continue to be lower. But one thing that is coming into perspective a little bit more is our health around COVID, and just, if, as cliche as it might sound, if you don't have that, your health, nothing else really matters. How has COVID, we talked a little bit about Aura, but how has it impacted, the businesses you've invested in, and even the way that you conduct business? Is there some things that the changes that you see, staying in place beyond even when lockdowns are lifted, and all the impacts that it might have had?
I think it's definitely impacted how business is being done. It hasn't impacted us that much. I mean, Lance is based in Austin and Aspen. I'm in the Bay Area. Mel's up in Portland area, and so we were already working remote. We were already using Zoom, and so it hadn't really impacted how we do stuff on a day-to-day basis. The biggest thing that I will say in our business, it's all about the people. And so if you can't meet and spend time and get comfortable with the people, and you can't do that over Zoom, I'm sorry. I just, and I may be old fashioned in that way. I don't think I am. If you're going to put money into a company behind a founder or a group of founders, you need, in our minds, kind of the top four things in investing in a company are people, and product. And so for us, that's going to be the biggest thing, is how to figure out how to do that. We are starting to travel a little bit. We recently put out a job description for hiring an associate. We had over 3,000 applicants for the role. We interviewed at the final group of candidates on Zoom, and we got down to 2 final candidates, and we decided we couldn't hire somebody over Zoom. We just couldn't. It was too important on a small team. And so we flew each of those 2 candidates out to Aspen and spent a significant amount of time with them over a couple of days to figure out whether or not we could work with them, and so that's going to be I think the biggest thing that's going to change, and why you're seeing the airline industry getting beaten up in the stock market right now is the non-essential travel related to business is gonna be curtailed. Now, maybe over time it gets back to normal, but certainly for the foreseeable future, and I'll give a very real example. I mean, I didn't think twice about jumping on a plane and flying from San Francisco to Denver and then up to Aspen. My partner Mel drove. She did not feel comfortable flying.
And I think we're going to continue to see that, especially when you talk about, putting money into a company or making a hiring decision. There's a lot of things like, you think about maybe a phone call you would have made a few years ago is now an email, a text message, maybe even a Twitter DM. And it's the same thing. It's going to happen with meetings. Whereas before, if you would have had a meeting, maybe now you can do it on the phone, do it on Zoom, but some things aren't replaceable. As we look to wrap up here, we'll actually get you out of here on this. What's the best way for people to maybe get in touch and learn more about Next Ventures?
I always direct people to the website, and we've got a I think a pretty decent website to figure out whether you can whether the company that you've got meets our basic criteria, and then come in through the info at Next Ventures mailbox. And I know that sounds impersonal, but we all read them every day. We read every single email that comes in, and have a very good process set up to be able to do that. So that's the best way to do it, I would say.
Great. I appreciate that. And I hope folks take you up on it. Lionel, I appreciate you making time today. It was great to chat, and I'm excited to share this conversation.
Oh, my pleasure. Have a great day.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's episode. For more from Fit Insider, visit insider.fit.co and subscribe to our weekly newsletter for insights and analysis on the business of fitness and wellness. Then go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. See you next time.